We are moving along. Observation number 5. I really like this one. Oftentimes, I believe that I struggle with certain topics, not necessarily because I'm weak at them. It's because of the frequency at which I make the mistake. And you know, that evidence can often build in someone's mind and make them think almost that they have a disability, that it's impossible for them to be able to modify or change their behavior. When in fact, it's literally just because there's opportunity to screw up, and that opportunity to screw up builds. But if you fix the underlying thought process or the underlying behavior, now all of a sudden it doesn't happen anymore. It was a simple, it's not like a deep-seated habit. And for me, this is actually a perfect example, right? Number 5, my man says, Mr. Marcus Aurelius, he says, avoid quick judgment of others' actions. Sometimes what you initially perceive as your followers or competition's mistakes are wiser and more deliberate than you think. And check this out. We build stories in our mind. We build evidence constantly to support what we believe to be true. It's how your brain's actually wired. You know, you see a picture on television, your brain completes the picture. You hear a sentence with context clues. Think about reading. Think about when you don't understand a word, your brain assigns and fills in the gap. We've seen this in all kinds of psychological studies of how the brain actually completes pictures and isn't seeing what it's really seeing, right? So just think about those like brain tricks that happen where you're like, oh my God, it really wasn't a triangle. It was a car. It's crazy. Like that's what's kind of happening here. So you got to be real careful that you jump to conclusions on what could be someone else's mistake. He goes on to say a lot of things are a means to an end. You have to know an awful lot before you can judge other people's actions. I'm going to share this real quick so that way the video people can see it. All right. This is the rule. A lot of things are means to an end. So you have to know a lot about someone before you can actually judge other people's actions with real understanding. What else this brings me to is the art of war. You know, often this is probably the most, this is quoted maybe as much as the Bible and read even less, right? The art of war. You know, when you're strong, act weak. When you're weak, act strong. If they think that you're going to strike high, strike low. War is the art of deception. Okay. That's basically the amount of that book that most people have listened to or heard or read. And then they go ahead and talk. And I'm like, I've listened to the audio book. My senseis actually tested us on it. If I didn't answer questions, I got beat up. So I can say I'm one of the ones that have actually read the book, and it is good throughout. But that's a key point that comes to mind right now with war is the art of deception. So you go ahead and make a judgment and you make a business decision because you think somebody else is making a mistake. Or as we talked even previously in this series, in lab, oftentimes we think because a laboratory who is successful and is powerful is practicing in a certain way, smaller labs will look at them and say, well, it must be compliant. But if you check the fruit on the tree, you will realize that fruit is rotten to the core. Go Google some of those laboratories' names and see the fines that they have paid for their business practices. Every single major laboratory out there do this with. And then Google their name change, who they were before, and the fines that they paid for their business practices. In the lab business, guys, I'm telling you right now, if you've seen one lab's business practices and one legal opinion, you've seen one lab's business practices and one lab's legal opinion. You cannot assume or judge that because they're doing it, you can do it. Okay? Because they may have already did the calculus and realized that it's just the cost of doing business for them. For you, it's silver handcuffs and no way out. Okay? So as we move through this, all right, my athletes, think about the head fake. Think about the juke move, right? Think about the crossover. You think they're going right, they're really going left. They're setting you up, right? So as you're a business owner, be careful not to judge people's actions. This can also just be because they're sad. They're your employees and they have shit going on at home. They have something on their mind. Okay. They could be a client that you're trying to pitch, and you're assuming because they're a doctor, they want to talk about clinical, when in fact they want to listen. I want to hear about money. You think because they're successful that they want to hear about money, but actually they want to hear about academics and being published. You think because they're a PhD and a doctor that they give a shit about school, when in fact they only want to treat patients and they want the care. You think that they're going to be driven by care, and really they want to spend more time with their family and spend time at home, and they're trying to figure out how to actually work less because they've reached a certain amount of success. The point here is you don't know. The whole reason for this series is you don't know. This is a learning mode opportunity for you to figure other stuff out, for you to start learning something brand new. And one of the smartest men ever to live is basically saying, hey, man, as smart as I am, as wise I am, as I am, as successful as I've been, I'll tell you right now, I didn't get here by judging people too quickly, because I'd have to know an awful lot about that person for me to be able to judge their actions with real understanding. I had a mentor. I'll just give his first name, Mike. Mike and I worked together in a business for 2 years. He used to say, in every deal, Blake, there are peppermints and there are chocolates. Our job is to feed them peppermints while we're keeping our chocolates. And that was the epitome of what this is. He'd set up the person on the other end of the deal, and he would feign what was important to him. He'd stack the deck in the conversation and the emails, and he'd leave tips. He'd leave little breadcrumbs and Easter eggs on what was important to him. And he'd watch as the counterparty all of a sudden would try to gobble it up. And while they were trying to move the deal at parameters towards what they thought he wanted, because people are dumb, he'd preserve and gain more territory on what he really wanted, right? I watched this man run circles around some of the largest oil and gas companies in the world practicing this. And I was lucky enough to be in his presence while he was doing it. And he took some time to tell me how. I don't disagree with the ethics behind what he was doing. He wasn't lying. He just wasn't, Jesus even talks about this in the Bible. I think it's on Mount Sinai. He goes out and he basically talks about his disciples are like, hey, Jesus, why don't we just tell everybody everything? Why don't we tell them the truth? And he says something like basically, hey, man, they're not ready. They wouldn't be able to understand. I mean, imagine if he knows how this story is going to end. He knows they're going to crucify him. You start telling everybody that I'm God now, we're not going to be able to do all the other works. The story is going to be over. They're not ready for it, right? We talk about real, raw, relevant results. The relevancy piece of it, not everybody needs to know everything at the same time. There are people who are practicing that in the business world. You yourself need to know if you're at the table. If you're not at the table, you're on the table, right? You need to make sure that you have a seat at the table and that you are there and you got your eyes up and you understand the deal and you're asking questions and you're not pretending to know what the fuck is going on. That you're actually there either to learn and ask questions and create this cascading pain web, right? The reason why we want to ask questions about, I'm going to roll out a doctor, right? Make this real lab specific. I don't know. I can't judge quick. I can't go in with a script. The people who study for me and the people that I train, they constantly want me to just tell me what to say. And I can't. I have to teach you how to think. Because if I tell you what to say, it ain't going to work. And the reason why it's not going to work is because I don't know the randomness of the morning that the doctor that you're talking to, or the week that they've had, or the season of the life that they're in, what's going to actually matter to them. What I can do is teach you how to think about the questions in the material. I can teach you how to ask questions about their body without asking them about if they feel fat or not. We could talk about how they connect with their purpose by talking about the care that they have for patients. We can ask them questions about what they see for healthcare and how they're able to balance family and life, and get them talking about their children and education and what they hope for them in the future in this crazy world. We could talk about their business targets and their marketing weaknesses and how they're getting business, and how basically Medicare and the payers are just trying to squeeze the hell out of them. And in figuring out what they want out of their own life, we can now reposition our test as a bridge to get them there. That's how you get people moving, understanding their pain. If I judge you too quickly and try to pitch you, I could literally be pitching to the person that I think you are and miss you because I don't understand who you really are.